One of the most useful things for the unit circle is to evaluate our angles. So if we're looking at the angle in this example, pi over 3, the point that corresponds to pi over 3 on the unit circle is 1/2 comma root 3 over 2. So that's something you should have memorized. And remember, instead of looking at these as xy points, we're now looking at them in terms of trig. So the first value is cosine and the second value is sine. So if I asked you to find the cosine value of pi over 3, well, that's just simply 1/2. If I asked you to find the sine value, that's root 3 over 2. And the tangent, so the tangent we have to do a little bit of work. Tangent is sine over cosine. So if I take my sine value, which is root 3 over 2, and I divide that by 1/2, remember when we have a fraction divided by a fraction, we flip that bottom one and multiply. So I'm going to multiply by 2 over 1, the 2's cancel, and I simply end up with square root of 3 over 1, which is just square root of 3. So cosecant, secant, and cotangent, they are literally just flips of the other functions. So this is going to be 2 over root 3. But remember, don't leave square roots in the denominator, so you have to rationalize that by multiplying by root 3 over root 3. So we end up getting 2 root 3 over 3, and that's the final answer. The secant is just 2 over 1, or just 2. And the cotangent value is simply 1 over root 3. But I have to rationalize that denominator, so I'm going to get root 3 over 3. So let's look at another example. If I asked you to evaluate all the trig functions of negative 5 pi over 6, so remember in this case we're going in the opposite direction. So 5 pi over 6, positive 5 pi over 6 would be right about here. So if you look at your unit circle, you want to go the exact same distance on the negative side. So we're going to be about here. So this is negative 5 pi over 6. And that corresponds with the positive 7 pi over 6. So make sure you understand how to go negative and positive. So, and the xy coordinates for that are negative root 3 over 2 and negative 1/2. So my sine value, remember they go cosine, sine, so it's cosine and then sine. They go in alphabetical order. That's one way to remember it. So my cosine value is negative root 3 over 2. My sine value is negative 1/2. And I have to do a little bit of work to get my tangent because it's sine over cosine. So it's going to be negative 1/2 divided by negative root 3 over 2. And I flip and multiply, so negative 2 over negative root 3. The negatives cancel. Negative divided by negative is positive, so I get 1 over root 3. But again, I can't leave that square root in the denominator, so I end up getting root 3 over 3. So it's going to be positive root 3 over 3. And for the cosecant, secant, and cotangent, we simply flip them. So I get negative 2. This is going to become negative 2 over root 3. But again, no radicals in the denominator, so I get negative 2 root 3 over 3. And my cotangent is going to be 3 over root 3, but I have to rationalize that denominator, so I end up getting 3 root 3 over 3, but these 3's cancel, so my final answer is simply square root of 3. So my cotangent is square root of 3. So lastly, how do we evaluate angles if they are not on the unit circle? So the one thing you also might want to check first is to make sure they're not disguised as being on the unit circle, because they could be multiples of 2 pi. Remember, you can add or subtract 2 pi to see if you can reduce that fraction. But generally, if the instructions are round your answer to the nearest 10,000ths, then you know you're talking about decimals, and that all comes from the calculator. So the nice thing about this is, first of all, make sure you are in radian mode. These are radians, so make sure you are in radian mode on your calculator. Okay, it's first and foremost. Your answers will look like they're right to you, but they won't be right. So make sure you won't be able to tell the difference if you don't check that. So all you do is you're going to put this literally just in parentheses. So do sine and then negative 20 pi divided by 9 on your calculator. And if you do that, you will get a decimal answer, and this one happens to be equal to negative 1.5557 on your calculator. So secant. So if I want to know secant, well, that is not one that is on my calculator. Be very careful. A lot of people think that to find that secant, they're going to do the inverse. You remember that little I'm sorry, that would be cosine inverse. But remember, that gives you an angle. We already have an angle. I'm not looking for an angle. I'm looking for an XY point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1 over cosine of negative 221 pi divided by 180. And just make sure this is in parentheses. So 1 divided by, because secant and cosine are inverses of each other. Remember, we talked about them being flipped at each other, which also means that it's simply 1 over cosine. So if I enter that on my calculator, I end up getting negative 1.325. And that's the final answer.